All right. Well, hello everybody. So we had some tech difficulties there. You able to hear? No? We're able to turn this up. Definitely a loud room. Yeah, I don't have control over that, but hopefully we can jack it up a little bit. Better than yelling. Test, test. Is that a little better? All right, cool. Get some thumbs up. Awesome. Well, thank you all for coming. I know it's not a ton of space in here, so thank you all for kind of, wedging your way in. But my name is Jordan. I am from the U.S., Portland, Oregon. I am a professional cocktail and liquor brand photographer. So it's one of those things where somehow that's a real job. It was a fun conversation with my parents, I'd be like, this is what I do for a living now. Take pictures of poison in cups. But truly, it's been super fun. Been doing this for like 7 years now. Started in 2017. And yeah, like I said, based on the West Coast of the US, I exclusively shoot for bars, restaurants, hotel groups, liquor brands. So all in kind of the cocktail liquor brand space. Got started out just taking pictures of drinks in my backyard and started working with distilleries in my city and kind of snowballed from there. Very much just started out with a very local focus and then started going to events like BCB in Brooklyn. This is my first Berlin event, but as I started kind of expanding out from a local focus, started working with some bigger companies and brands in other markets and kind of grew from there that way. So today, like I said, a few kind of tech difficulties, but thank you, my man, for letting me borrow your computer. So I'll kind of hobble through this, but a little presentation for you guys of kind of a crash course of beverage photography. And then, again, kind of not a ton of space for everyone, but I do have some lighting and some kind of basic, lighting gear and equipment that you can kind of come through and practice with. The team in the back that will kind of prep some cocktails. Likely not all of you will be able to come through, but we'll see what we can do. But yeah, at least kind of give you a crash course of kind of my process. And if you want to take notes, I also will have a QR code at the end, so you can download the presentation, have all that info, because I do have links and recommendations for different gear and things like that, so you will get access to that. As well as access to, I do a lot of e-courses online, so it gives you free access to kind of further education, because there's only so much we can get into within a seminar. So I want to at least give you that option if you want to dive in a little further. So, to figure out how to click through here, but I'll figure it out. Oh, yeah. Off the air, well, it's because it's not under presentation mode. Oh, awesome, sweet. I promise I know what I'm doing. Gosh. Cool. So that's me. Jordan. I already said that. So, like I said, I exclusively shoot for bars, restaurants, liquor brands, all of that. This isn't necessarily images shot on an iPhone, but did want to kind of talk through at least some fundamentals of beverage photography when it comes to storytelling. Because it's one of those things when I got started where photographers would be like, oh, you have to tell a story through your image. And it would always kind of be like, what does that mean? Like I'm taking a picture of a Manhattan, a brown drink on a brown table. What is my story? And honestly, I guess that was the story. It wasn't a very good one. But when it comes to creating compelling beverage imagery, right? Like most of the time you're taking a picture of something that's not moving, that's just sitting on a table or on a bar top. And it can be like this tricky thing of like, how do I actually make this dynamic? How do I make this something that actually takes people's attention? And that's where it comes down to having a basic understanding of storytelling. This is just your basic narrative structure of any movie, play. Intro, rising action, climax, final battle scene, sort of thing. And that's a full movie or full video, right? So it's like, how do you do that in one image, one photo? And that's where it more comes down to, at least in the cocktail making process, thinking of kind of specific moments in the story. For me, when it comes to capturing cocktails, I'm thinking about like, what are these moments that people often overlook or often skip over? I mean, this is, what we call the zest shot now, where it's just, expressing an orange peel over the top of a drink. And for all of you who are bartenders, it doesn't like look like this epic when you're making drinks, right? It's not like this fireworks show when you express an orange peel. It's very much like you have to have the perfect lighting, you have to have a dark background, for someone to be able to see that. So it's one of those things where it's like, this isn't exactly just, someone sitting across from you at the bar. Like, that's a split-second moment, right? So when it comes to beverage photography, I'm trying to find those moments that people often overlook or often just don't notice. Whether that is, the citrus oil, placing the garnish on a drink. I've been capturing a few bartenders who are throwing, obviously that's a little more, that gets people's attention. But oftentimes the storytelling element with cocktail photography is how to draw people in to a process they might not notice otherwise. Because again, it's freezing a moment, drawing out something that is small and insignificant and making someone go, oh, now I want to know what that is. Like, what are you doing when you're squeezing that peel? It's like getting them to pay attention to something that they wouldn't have otherwise. And again, that's just kind of my general approach. That's kind of what I boil it down to with the storytelling element. Because yeah, you can't tell a full narrative all the time with a still image of a drink. But it's about how can I draw someone in and, versus just, okay, here's a plain drink on a table. But thinking, okay, what element can I do here to draw attention? Are we okay? Is that, oh, Lauren, we good? Okay. It's like, should we be running right now? Or so before we kind of get into, hopefully crafting some of this stuff, I want to give you, again, just some very practical tips and things that I kind of keep in mind when shooting cocktails, whether I'm using a full-on camera, DSLR, or a smartphone. Again, this is trying to be kind of the basics that will help you in any situation. So this one I think of as light before liquid. It's kind of what I tell everyone I teach, coach, and all of that. And sometimes this is something if you're in a busy bar or busy event, you can't always adhere to this. But in general, I try to have like my set up, my lighting. I take an empty glass basically and take a bunch of test shots to make sure everything looks good before I pour the cocktail, because as you know, for any bartenders, you don't want to make a drink and then have it sit there for 15, 20 minutes before your guest gets it, right? So it's all about just making sure everything is dialed in before you pour the drink, because as soon as you pour the drink, a timer starts. So if you're kind of messing around with your lighting and your background and all of that, that drink might melt or kind of fall apart. So all about just kind of making sure all of that's dialed in before you pour the cocktail, which hopefully we'll kind of do a little bit together, making sure lighting and scenery and everything is kind of dialed in before you do that. So next one here, very much lighting is a big focus for a lot of my education. For me, like, I didn't start out with some fancy camera. For me, the focus was very much on lighting and getting some flashes or some soft boxes and trying to figure out how to use light with a cheap camera. Because honestly, I feel like that's the biggest thing that's going to have an effect on your imagery. So many people come to me and ask, what camera should I buy, or what iPhone is the best one? And honestly, I was like, it does. I'm not going to say cameras don't matter. It does matter. But your lighting is going to have the biggest effect, not just lighting gear, but just your knowledge of lighting and how lighting works. This is what I tell people is like, if you get into beverage photography, you're just always going to be noticing lighting and thinking about lighting. That's what you have to do to get good at it. So this is where things which hopefully will again kind of try to show you practically how some of this works, but all these different factors about the distance of your lighting, the size of your lighting. Now in here, we're in kind of this big, bright event hall with a ton of people, so a little harder to kind of illustrate it. But whether you're working with a window or one of these, like, put a big softbox on here, whatever your light source is, it's kind of about how close your subject is to your light source. This is kind of a good example on size. Is the size of your light source. Again, this is, studio equipment, but that could also be a window. a large light source is going to give you really soft lighting. So if you see on these pictures here, when we talk about hard versus soft lighting is when there's a really hard shadow. You can see a hard line versus this where there's a shadow, but it's pretty blurred. So soft lighting versus hard lighting. And again, that comes down to the size of the light source. Really big window, really big softbox. It's going to give you this really soft, pleasing wraparound lighting versus, you know, something with a small light source. Again, small window or spotlight. It's going to give you the really dramatic shadows. And with the hard light, it's a little less forgiving. You have to be a lot more precise with how you set your scene. But for me, if you've seen any of my work, I kind of lean into the more shadowy, dark and moody stuff. Like, I kind of enjoy the hard lighting and just those really dramatic shadows. So again, it's not like one is better than the other or one's the right or wrong. It's all about the story you're trying to tell, the vibe you're trying to set. It's all about just being creative and experimenting with different light sources and different ways of telling that visual story. So this one is a little more intuitive of setting your scene, but even after doing this for 7 years, I feel like oftentimes I'm going to bars and taking pictures of bartenders in action. There's always stuff of like the sanitizer bucket. I always end up getting that in the background, or the stuff where I'm like, I've shot at this bar for 5 years and I'm still getting the sanitizer bucket in the background. So there's stuff like that where it sounds really like basic, but just like, yeah, when you go in to capture a cocktail in a bar or your home, it's being aware of your background and what stuff, because yeah, I mean, we have Photoshop, we have AI now, we can take stuff out, but it's such a pain in the ass when like you take a picture of a bottle and you're like, oh, we've got all these dust specks on it. When I shoot at bars, I bring an assistant with me, and he just has in his bag like Swiffers, like duster things, where he's like going through, even if the bar top looks clean, he's like detailed cleaning everything, just because he's the guy who has to edit stuff afterwards. He's like, I don't want to be going through moving pixels around. So again, it sounds basic, but even, you know, sometimes you just get in the mode of like, yeah, there's the drink, I'm capturing it, and you kind of just miss stuff that you could easily have just moved out of the way that can kind of ruin your shot. So all that stuff's good to keep in mind. The next one is composition, which is another one I get a lot of questions about, of just like, okay, like, I think a lot of us want a formula, a way of like, how do I take a good photo? And to be honest, I kind of wish it was easier of just like, cool, follow I think most of us are aware of like the rule of thirds at this point, right? Like, we all have smartphone cameras with a grid on it, and you're supposed to put the subject on like, you know, the 1/3 of the thing, and like, yeah, that's fine. I mean, yeah, there's this natural thing of like, your eyes are drawn to these points, but I guess with the rule of thirds, I'm like, yeah, everybody knows that now. Every photo kind of looks the same. For me, I'm like, yeah, there's compositional rules, but rules are meant to be broken. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't say that in Germany, but I've been jaywalking a lot since I've gotten here, so I apologize. But that's like part of the fun of creative work, is like, yeah, there are these compositional rules. Rule of thirds, rule of odds. You can Google compositional rules, there's a bunch of them. But it's the sort of thing where I think just part of the process is like, yeah, learn those things, they can be helpful, but so much of it is just figuring out like, well, what's a unique way of showing, in our case, this cocktail or capturing bartenders? Can I do it in a way that I haven't seen before, or in a way that's just unique? So much of some of us were talking about earlier, kind of the phrase, I don't know if you've heard the phrase of copy like an artist, where it kind of sounds like shitty almost, where you're like, oh, I'm copying someone else's work. But there is a level of, yeah, seeing people who inspire you, whether it's their compositions, their lighting, and trying to emulate that, but with the goal of kind of finding your own style. And that's what I mean with this whole thing of, we all want a formula. We all want, well, if I just do this, if I just do what Jordan says, or shoot like him, my photos will look like him. Well, I don't want your photos necessarily to look like mine. I want them to look like yours. And that's the thing, there's not a formula to finding your style or your kind of creative approach. It's just a matter of doing the thing and trying it, and trying different angles, different things where you're like, maybe this is against the rules, maybe this is not what people have, but yeah, I'm gonna shoot from down low and under somebody's arm or whatever. It's about finding those unique things, again, that feels like you, and it doesn't necessarily feel like me or somebody else. So again, I feel like that's always kind of hard, because it'd be much nicer to just have like follow A, B, and C, but it's a matter of just doing it, trying it, and seeing what happens. All right, so this one we get a little more technical. So I guess I could ask show of hands. How many of you like have a camera aside from your smartphone? Got, oh, okay, quite a few of you. Awesome, cool. If you brought your cameras, we can have some fun. So we're talking about focal length, which is basically how long the lens is. When it comes to our smartphones, I know not all of us, but a lot of smartphones now have like the 3 cameras on them, where you kind of have your standard view, then one's like the wide angle, it goes really wide, and the other one's like zoomed in. So that's what we're talking about with focal length, is basically how zoomed in your camera is or your lens is. So for those of you with cameras, you're often buying lenses that are marked by focal length. So you're getting like a 50 millimeter lens, or like a longer lens would be like 70 or 90, 100 millimeters that really zooms in for you. So when it comes to capturing cocktails, liquor bottles, smaller subjects, I recommend using a longer focal length. So on your camera, I would recommend using it maybe 50 to 70 millimeters or longer. A lot of the images I'm shooting are like 90 millimeters or 100 millimeters. Again, if you're just smartphone, that's using basically your telephoto lens. If you use your wide angle lens, you start getting more what we call distortion, which now these ones here used with the Westward whiskey bottle, not sponsored or anything, it's just what I pulled out at my studio. This isn't actually a super wide lens, but basically just trying to show like you get kind of this fisheye effect when you're using a wide angle lens. Again, this isn't super wide, but even with this, like it starts looking kind of like this forced perspective, like it's like a skyscraper where it's small at the bottom and kind of goes up at the top. This one isn't too bad, but you just see more of the background, versus this at a longer focal length, you get something called compression, where it makes the background look closer to the subject. And you also start to get kind of that blurred background that we now unfortunately know is portrait mode on our phones, where it's kind of blurry background, sharp subject. So this is just more a practical example of like having a longer focal length, again with smaller subjects, it just gives you a more kind of realistic view. I also feel like it gives you a more cinematic view as well. Again, like it's not like these are hard rules, like I've been saying, like maybe you want to get a little funky and weird with the wide angle lens, awesome, do that. But in general, if I'm shooting for a client, doing some commercial work, I don't want to distort their bottle or make it look, unrealistic or different from what it is. So that's something good to keep in mind. Again, if your phone goes to that longer focal length or that more zoomed in view, that's kind of the way to go. So almost done here. This one is really helpful when it comes to shooting in bars, especially when it's dark or you don't have these massive windows. And a lot of bartenders, you're working at night as well, so it's like you might not have window light. So some of you may have done this already at events here where it's dark and you're trying to take a selfie with a friend and like you have to stand still for like 3 seconds. It's basically like in a dark environment, it's taking a long exposure. So it's like letting more light in, so you just have to hold it really still for a few seconds, otherwise you're going to get a blurry photo. So that's why I recommend just having some way to kind of lock off your device, whether it's your phone, it's your camera. This is just like, I brought some of these for you guys to try out if you're shooting together, just like a way to, now with some of these, the higher you get, it might get a little wobbly, but a way to just make your device as still as possible so that you can shoot in darker environments. And also when you're shooting with a set, you might want to move some things around. It just kind of takes one factor out of it, where you can kind of leave your phone in one area, not have to worry about shake or blur. It just makes it that much easier. So now again, I'll give you guys this slide so you kind of have all these recommendations, and I have stuff linked as well to make it easy for you. But these are kind of some of the, I don't want to say basic equipment. A lot of this stuff I use as well with some of my more expensive gear. But just trying to think realistic of like, maybe not everyone here wants to be a professional photographer. might not want to go out and spend thousands of dollars on a camera. So these are all what I would kind of characterize as more kind of starter equipment. Again, lighting is a big factor. So I brought some of these. These are one of my kind of favorite secret weapons. These are called, specifically as a Nanlite Pavo 2. There's a few different brands that make these, but these I love for bars and restaurants, shooting cocktails, all that. Because again, it's small. I can throw this in a winter jacket, in a camera bag very easily. Throw it on a bar top. It's also magnetic, so I often will put these on a back bar, or for like those zest shots I was showing where it's like the oil glowing, I'll put that down in the well, so you kind of get this backlighting for the oils to stand out. Just very versatile light, but also when it comes to capturing glassware, bottles, anytime you have a light source, a window, or a softbox, you're going to get a reflection, right? So if you're using a big softbox, you're going to get this big white kind of reflection in the side. So with this, since it's tall and linear, it's just a really nice highlight for bottles and cocktails. So again, really, I mean, now if you're in a cool, vibey, dark bar, you probably don't want to be the person who just kind of busts this out in the middle of the night. So you still want to be aware of your surroundings and not be the asshole who's like blinding the person next to you. But this is great. Oftentimes, if I'm taking pictures with this, I'll try to go right when the bar opens or maybe before service to use this. But these I think run, at least in the US, around $80. I haven't checked here, but again, I'll have all these recommendations for you. And yeah, as far as camera gear, I know I said before, like, I don't have as much of an emphasis on the camera itself. Now, again, I don't want to be one of the people who says that the cameras don't matter. It certainly does. But I think it is something that people overly focus on, of thinking of it as like a shortcut to taking a good photo. So I do have a few cameras that I recommend, kind of in the Fujifilm or Sony world. But very much with a lot of the stuff we talked about here, it really is more about knowing how to take a good photo, how to tell a good story visually. Because yeah, it's like I've seen people spend lots of money on cameras and be like, okay, why aren't my photos that much better? You might have more resolution, you might have, it might be clearer, but it doesn't necessarily make it an easy way to just taking good photos. So that's at least kind of my soapbox, at least, that I go on with that. Yeah, and then let's see, I think we just have the code here for you guys to scan. I know for some of you, in the back, you might kind of have to roll through. I'm going to kind of set up just a few lights here, and I know we have, we can start putting those. We have a few different drinks. Again, I apologize, I know space-wise we're just a little limited on, what we can accommodate here, but hopefully we can just have a few people come through. I think we still have like the room for like another half hour, so I'll be hanging out, whether you can come through and shoot or you just have questions. It's kind of hard to open the room just sound-wise, but I'm also around all 3 days, so if you see me walking around, would love to chat with you. You could also shoot me a DM and anything too. Always down to help you guys out with camera questions, lighting questions. That's one of the things I could just nerd out about forever. So very much down for that. So give us a few minutes here to kind of set some stuff up. And then hopefully we can have some of you come through and practice shooting. So yeah, thank you guys, appreciate it.
Jetzt auf jeden Fall schöne
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna get, but yeah, I'm gonna like get a